As a way of saying thank you for filling out the survey about new agent concerns, I've given you this cheat sheet, if you will, on how to select a broker. One of the questions that we get all the time at the Academy is, once I get my license, I don't know how to choose a broker, so what do you recommend? Well, the first thing that you need to remember is no matter which brokerage you choose, don't let it be about your ego. You know, you're not being considered by a Fortune 500 company for an executive position. There's no corner office, there's no company perks. If the broker says, congratulations, you have the job, it doesn't mean you have to take it. This is an unsalaried position that we're talking about. You know, unless you produce real sales and close them, you don't get paid. And in real estate, we get numb to the fact that real estate brokers are always recruiting, and people never pay attention to the fact that rarely is anybody ever turned away. The reality is, in this business, you may have unrealistic expectations. It's not the broker's fault if you fail to do well, it's yours. There's a lot of turnover in the business. People coming into it, leaving it, changing brokerages. And obviously there are good choices that you can make. And if you get into a brokerage that assists with your growth and your profitability, you will do well. A poor choice could result in your swift search for another line of work. I call it getting a real job. In our industry, the one you hope to enter soon, optimism often gives way to disillusionment and failure. And perhaps it's you as the agent that chose the wrong broker. Perhaps you expected the broker to supply you with leads, or you were just shopping for the best commission split or the lowest desk fees. Since agents are typically independent contractors, most of whatever happens to us as agents is our own responsibility. There's a lot of freedom to call our own shots, but there's no one to blame if we fail but ourselves. So it's your duty, your responsibility to do your research and conduct your interviews with brokers or managers and determine the best place for you. Before you sign anything, speak to agents in the office and see what they think. And you need to be looking for an environment that you're comfortable in that will be conducive to your success. You know, the right environment enables you to make real money. Knowing you made the right decision affords you peace of mind. And it's comforting to know that you're in the right place, and that you have the technology and the tools available to assist you, and a market presence with a broker that the public wants to do business with. You know, some of the myths and realities about real estate. You know, the myth is that all real estate agents are rich. You know, the fact is the median realtor income in Texas for 2013 was $47,700. That's the median. That means half made more and half made less. Then another myth is that everybody in real estate is successful, but the fact is over 75% of the agents don't stay in real estate past the first year. The myth is that it's hard to find a broker to sponsor you, but the reality is there are more brokerages looking for agents than there are agents looking for brokerage, or rather agents looking for brokerages. The myth that you have to join a large franchise if you want to be successful, but the fact is in El Paso there are more independent brokers in the top 20 than there are franchises. The fact is there are 1,970 active members of the Greater El Paso Association, approximately. The fact is over 600 of them have not sold a home in 2014, and over 300 of them have only sold one home this year. You know, some of the things that you want to ask when you're looking for a brokerage is about issues about training. You know, a lot of agents will say, you know, what kind of training do you have? You know, you need to get a little bit more specific. Agencies, companies will tell you how great their training is, but you need to go a little bit deeper. So you want to know, what does your training program consist of? Is it effective? How do you know that it's effective? And how is it different from what other companies offer? When you ask about the company, it's not just about market share and impressing you with their numbers of how many sales they had. Some deeper questions. Why should I work for you? What are the company's plans for growth? And how would you define what this company stands for? You know, what is the culture of the company? Ask the broker or the manager what they think it takes to succeed, and why that company would be a good choice for you. When it comes to the agents, more agents is not always better. So you may want to know how many they have. What is their attrition rate? How many agents do they bring in that leave? Not just leave their company, but leave the business. You may want to know what characteristics they're looking for in new agents. And if they could create the perfect recruit, what attributes would they have? And then ask them how they define success, because it's not the same for everybody. We talk about commission splits, and obviously that's important. How much money you make is important. But company policies and fees are also important. So in addition to what are your commission splits, you may want to know, how does this compare to other companies? What other fees might you be responsible for? Are there marketing costs? Are there costs for making copies? Costs for coffee? There's all kinds of different fees out there that they could charge. So are there advertising or marketing costs? Are there advertising or marketing discounts? And ask them about an office policy manual. Is there an office policy manual that you can read? The reality is that the state requires real estate brokerages to have a written office policy manual. So if they can't provide that for you, you might want to consider that. And then finally, how things work. Questions about the office and how things function. Does the company provide leads? And if so, how are company leads generated and how are they distributed? What suggestions do they have for agents that are new in real estate? And what expenses are there that may be shared by the agents? Again, going back to marketing and office materials, that sort of thing. Do they have floor time and how is it handled? Can you hold open houses and what kind of training do they have for that? How accessible is the broker and who else could you call for help? The broker doesn't necessarily have to be available 24 hours a day, but should be available when you need them. And then you want to know, can you talk to other agents that are in the office? And you should do that. Absolutely you should do that. These are just a few of the things that you may want to know about when you're choosing a brokerage. Hopefully that this was helpful for you, and I look forward to providing you with some more information in the future.